everyone. Welcome to the Charlotte Mason Show. I'm your host, Julie Ross, and today I'm here with my partner in crime, Shay Kemp. And today's going to be a little different because instead of Shay and I just talking about different topics, I'm actually going to be interviewing you, Shay. Can you handle this?
I don't know if I can or not. How hard are the questions?
Very, very hard. Well, we've been doing a series this year on homeschooling through different challenges. And Shay has been wonderful enough to be willing to come and talk about some of her family's experiences this past year. And I know many others have lost loved ones this year with the pandemic and everything else going on. That this will be a relevant topic for so many. So thank you, Shay, for being willing to talk about something so hard.
Yeah.
And can you just share a little bit kind of like what's been going on with your family, with everyone?
Sure. So I live only about 15 minutes maybe from my parents. My dad and mom pastored all of my life, and so I've been really close to them. And in June of 2020, my dad and mom both got COVID. And my dad's always had some bronchial issues, quick to get bronchitis and some sickness and stuff. And so he ended up being hospitalized and for 10 days and came home super weak, but here, you know, and began to get his strength back over the next 5 to 6 weeks, was really doing a whole lot better. And then woke up one Sunday morning with a lump on his arm. Went to the ER and found out it was a small blood clot. So they told him it was very small. They gave him some medicine to break that up and expected it probably to be gone in the next couple of days. The next day was a Monday, August the 31st of last year, 2020. And I cooked for my parents almost every Monday night, almost every week. And so he came over for supper, but wasn't feeling all that great. And long story short, just started having some breathing issues and passed away right here at our house. And my girls were here. I have 2 that live at home still. I have 5 children, but 2 at home. One was 9 at the time, and one was 14 at the time. And my mom, of course, was here. My husband was on his way home from work. So, yeah, it was super traumatic because he had been doing really well.
Mm-hmm.
And, all the things the doctor said that you need to do to get your strength back from COVID, you know, all the vitamins, all the walking, really that kind of thing. Yeah, so it really rocked our world, to say the least. We very close family, yeah. And so to have somebody who was so important to us to be gone so quickly and unexpectedly has been definitely a path I didn't expect to walk. So.
And then recently?
Yes, and then recently, a little over a month ago, my mother-in-law passed away. She had been battling cancer for about 2 years and was actually doing really well. And then my son was married this past June. She was able to make it to that, but then after that, her health just really started going down. And so she was put on hospice care. So we went to Virginia and helped take care of her. Lots of back and forth trips there. And she passed away in the first week of September this year. So it's been a lot of loss. And I know that there are so many others that have similar stories, especially in what we're living in now, and understand that grief is just, you know, I had lost people in my life before. A very dear friend of cervical cancer about 4 years ago. People I loved, but the amount of loss and grief that's just going on in the world today is just, it's heavy. So I'm sure there's other people who face them very similar right now.
Yeah, which I'm glad that you're willing to talk to us about it, and that's kind of why I wanted to do this series, right? So people know that they're not alone in they might know someone a friend or a family member who's going through something like this too, and how they can best help. Oftentimes people say things that are extremely helpful. So was there anything, I just thought of that, was there anything that was helpful for you that other people did during this time?
I think probably the most helpful thing is people not saying, what can I do, but just doing something. Even if it...
You let me know if you need some help. Well, I'm not going to let you know that. I can barely think right now.
Right. And I am a helper. I mean, I'm usually the person that likes to slide in and be the helper. So it is hard for me to ask for help. And so, like I had friends who showed up one day and they did not ask me if they could cook a meal. She showed up with soup and she had one part of it frozen and one part of it already cooked and said, I don't know if you need this, but here, give it to your neighbor if you don't. I just wanted to do something. Things like that, or notes that I got, just, hey, I have a memory of your dad. And even with my mother-in-law just passing away, and that was really involved because there was, like I said, hospice care, people saying, hey, your girls need something lighthearted. Can I take them to the park or that kind of thing? I'm coming at 3:00 to get them taken to the park.
Yeah.
That's probably been the most helpful thing and surprising thing. That's kind of carried me through.
Yeah, that's great. Those are some good examples. So how did this directly then affect you, your kids, your homeschool?
Well, my dad was a huge supporter of our homeschooling. I was a public school teacher, and he was thrilled about that I did that. I did that for several years until I had my son, and he would always tell me, this was what, 25 years ago, when homeschooling was not popular. So when we decided to homeschool my son, he was so incredibly supportive. Both parents.
Because a lot of people don't have that.
No, they don't. And in fact, every year at the beginning of the year, I have this file I call my encouragement file. And if somebody sends me a note, it's always specific to homeschooling, like a note about my kids, say, or something about homeschooling, something like that. The beginning of the year, I always open my encouragement file. And before we ever start the fresh year, I go through that on my own before I start any planning. And I have a note in there my dad wrote years ago. And it's just so encouraging. I'm so grateful my grandkids have you as a teacher. Don't give up. Keep to, so that's the kind of man that he was. And so really, I miss that voice. My mom is still that way and incredibly supportive. But my dad had sort of a teacher's heart too. He was a preacher, yes, but he was an incredible teacher. So I think he understood why I loved homeschool so much and why it's important to get that encouragement. So in that aspect, it had a huge effect on us. But also, practically, both of these deaths have been at the beginning of the regular school year.
Right.
And so, we really homeschool year round, but we, start kind of fresh again, August, September. It has been 2 years of trying to get traction to get started again, knock your game as far as schedule and routine go. Strict scheduler, not strict on schedule, but I am pretty good about routine. I like my routines. I think it keeps us moving forward, and that has not been easy. It's 2 years in a row of trying to keep that going. So
it's very true. I mean, you were having to travel back and forth to Virginia several times, and then even with your dad, there was all different kinds of events and things that you all were a part of. Yeah,
exactly. So I think another thing that I really miss, and if there's any mom, I don't know if we have any grandparents out there that listen to this, but every year my mom and dad did a teacher appreciation day for me and for all my school. But and it was never anything elaborate, but like one time she would fix us lunch and the kids would help make it, or they would make a card, or they would take us out to lunch or do something. And that was just not happening. Wow. Yeah. This year when it came around, I was like, tough. So,
now, how about your kids? How did it affect them?
I had to really, last year, we just didn't homeschool for a while. We just didn't school for a while. I mean, my girls were here last year when my father passed away. Super traumatic. We put them both in counseling because it was just traumatizing. the way he passed away, and they were there. And um, it took a while for them to get back on track with their attentiveness, to be perfectly honest with you. I didn't do anything but read alouds for a while, but I saw such a change in the way they were attentive to anything that we could do. Very short attention spans, very easily distractible. Lots of acting out that seemed like it had nothing to do with that event. I know from the things that had happened there. So I had to be really sensitive. I think that's one of the lessons that I've learned, is to look at the behavior or listen to the words and really think what's going on behind that behavior. What's going on behind those words? Why are you doing that? Why are you acting the way that you're acting? Not just, what do you mean? You just only, oh, you got done in an hour, whatever,
right.
I mean, just really looking beyond. Last year, I kind of just call it a wash. I'm just like, okay, we learned about relationships last year. We learned about how you deal with trauma. I read a lot of books to them about grief, a lot of scripture about grief. Gave them a lot of free time, to process. And this year, it was, like I said, my mother-in-law had been sick, but it was downhill pretty quickly. We really, honestly, just in the past probably 3 weeks, have gotten our feet kind of back under us.
Yeah, no, I think what you're saying is hugely important, because, and I do think it is one of the gifts of homeschooling, is that kids can grieve in a safe space and have the time to do so. Whereas if they were in public school, they'd have to go right back to school, and you're expected to do everything, and you don't have time to grieve. And really, it is extremely hard to concentrate through grief. I mean, studies show that, that way it affects our focus and our brains, and then expecting children to be able to just, when adults can't do it, is very unrealistic. Right. So being home, you do have the opportunity to heal and process together. And again, like, that's a skill that they're going to need for the rest of their lives, is how do you deal with trauma and grief? That we can't escape it. We live in a fallen, sinful world, sadly. And what you're giving them is an incredible gift. And
I have a high schooler, so I did have to sort of, she's in the 10th grade this year, so 9th grade last year. So, when you hit high school, there's like, oh, there's that pressure. Like, I have to get this.
It actually counts now. Yeah.
I was like, somebody's actually going to look at this. Right. But, I just had to tell her, she could not get her, like, the math is just not going to happen last year. So I literally tabled it until January. I said, we're not going to touch this math until January. I don't care when you finish it. I'm really, really grateful for that privilege and of having those choices. Because she likes to sew. She's very crafty. She's very artistic and sort of a home arts way. She loves to bake things and stuff. And I just gave her an elective credit for that. We took pictures. We kept logs of what she did, how much time she spent, research, all that. Cause so, it's not just, okay, we'll just go make something. So we did replace it with something, but if I had kept her in that was really stressing her out, it would have hurt our relationship, definitely her attitude towards math. So we picked it back up later on, and it was much different. So those choices, the opportunity to make those choices for her and let her sort of process the way she needs to process has been huge in healing.
That's such a great example. I think when we're going through challenges, have to allow ourselves to think outside the box, and don't feel discouraged or pressured if we're not getting to all the things that we think we're supposed to get to, but realize the value of the other things that are happening. And so, yeah, that's a great example. And I'm sure it was so healing for her to bake and sew and do the things that she was really good at and loves doing too.
Yes, it was. And she said multiple times how much easier, I think, having two deaths that close together. Now they've processed the death of my mother-in-law with a lot more grace for even themselves. take that time
Yeah.
last year. And she's seen, okay, I know I need to back away from this because I need to take a moment to do, a baking day, or I need to find something creative, or I need to, and that's a life skill that if anything comes out of the hurt, the pain, the grief, I want them to take that out because life's going to bring them grief again. It's going to bring, we know that. I mean, Jesus said, you will have trouble in this world. So I can bank on that. But for me to help them have some skills and me learn the skills too, how am I going to process that? How can I help myself through that? What do I ask for? How do I listen to my own emotions and see what I need to make it through this day so that I don't implode or explode on everybody I live with? It's really important life skill.
Yeah, so let's talk about what you just said there for a second. How did you grieve and move forward?
I think I was really in shock for the first. Honestly, I don't even remember last September. We actually went on vacation. It had been long planned. I have almost no memories of that vacation. I was completely shut down.
Well, that's very common in trauma to have block things out. Yeah. That's how your body copes and lets you survive, right? Yeah.
Right. Because it was just so traumatic, and I had to give my dad CPR, and it was just things you never expect you're going to have to do. But I love to be creative too. I knitted last year a blanket. I caught my grief blanket. I went and bought this huge wheel of yarn that was all like black and gray, and I had white in there. That was super, it was very therapeutic for me. Things like, I love to watercolor. I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm learning. I just started with the girls a couple of years ago. But I think if it had not been for those sorts of things where I could not have the thoughts in my head be the only thing in my head, and I had the freedom that comes with being creative, what that might be. And for me personally, because I am a routine person, it did help me to have some routine every day, even though it did not look a regular school routine. It was really important for me to have a routine. So that was super helpful for me.
Routine for you personally, like this is what time I get up, this is what time we eat. Like, what do you mean by routine for you? Okay.
Yeah. Well, for every morning, it was really important, and still is with dealing with the grief. I tend to put, I guess every mom's going to say this, put the kids first, right? So I realized I really need a routine for myself. So it is super important for me that I'm up and I face the day before other people in the house have interacted with them. Usually coffee, my Bible, something inspirational to read, something challenging to read, making a list of the tasks that absolutely have to get done, and the tasks that I hope I do, and something positive about that day. That has been really important for me, really healing, that sort of routine. And I did those things before in a more of a scattered manner. I mean, sort of, but it's been much more intentional, and it's helped me tremendously. And also, just honestly, I mean, saying I just can't do this today.
Yes, that's huge. Saying no.
Yeah. I just can't do it. Like, I'm sorry. I mean, there was a couple of days, probably more than a couple, not a huge amount, but several days, I would just let the girls sleep, and I'm like, I can't do it today. And then they would wake up and, Mom, it's like 10:30. We slept till 10:30. I'm like, I can't do it today.
Right.
And it did give them the freedom to look at me and say, Mom, I can't do it today. So we won't, we won't do it today. That's not in my personality. I'm a work first and play later kind of girl. Like, always get the to-do list done, and then we will have fun for sure, but we're going to do it after we do the to-do list. And so,
yeah, I think that's a great point about
that
taking care of yourself first, because I know, all moms, especially homeschool moms, I think we struggle with this the most, of putting our kids first, right? And it can be a way to kind of escape the grief sometimes. by focusing on other people and not
Yes.
having to deal with your own stuff. So I think that's a great point. That there, these certain healing practices, you have to do them every day and keep the routine going and make them a habit, not just something you do every now and then,
Yes.
but it's like a life giving oxygen mask. You must do these things every day or you can't get through, and allow yourself the time, to do things out of the box or start school late or not do school at all that day. Did you ever struggle with feeling like worried that you were getting behind or that, oh my gosh, like how are we going to make us up?
Yes. Yes. And I think I've let go of a lot of that
Mm-hmm.
already through the years. Used to definitely be that person. Like, if it
Mm-hmm.
said week 3, doggone it, we're doing it on week 3, and it's not going
Yeah.
to be done on week 4. There was a time in my life where I was much more like that. But I do have 5 kids, and I think
Yeah.
that sort of, when we were all homeschooling, and finally I realized, okay, back then I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
lose it, um, mainly when my daughter was dealing with some of that stuff with math or some of these other things. Definitely then, um, I could feel that voice. You're not, um, you know, not going to work. You're going to mess the kids up. You're going to mess your schedule up. You definitely. I'm really blessed to have some great friends in my life and a very supportive husband, um, who would look at me and say, "It's okay. There's no behind. There's no behind it." And you do need that. You need the support
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
desperately. I mean, you need the support desperately. Somebody that can look at you and say, "I see you're floundering," or whatever is the message that you need that day that's in your life. And I tend to be a withdrawer. So I did try really hard to pull, okay, I'm going to stay back here and deal with this on my own. And when I get it figured out how I grieve, then you guys can. And I'm really grateful that I had people who, were, no, I don't think that's what you need. I think you need us to show
Yeah, I
up.
think it's a very good point. And like there's a correct way to grieve and a wrong way to grieve, and you got to do it the right way rather than just allowing people to see the mess because it there is no right way. It's working through
Right.
the mess
And it,
and working through the mud that every process everybody has to go through, and it's not this linear. Here's the 5 steps to. Yeah.
oh, that, I mean, my friend gave me a book, and the book was actually great, but the first part of it was like these steps. I'm like, wait a minute, I have to go through steps? I'm like, don't tell me. I'm
I'm
like,
just
how do
running
I
around in
know?
circles right now.
I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
spiraling down. Help!
Yeah, that's good. Were there any resources that were helpful that you'd like to mention, or things like you talked about already with other people, but
I
anything
think
specific?
counseling is
What?
super important. Just
Counseling.
counseling.
Yes.
Counseling,
Mm-hmm,
super
mm-hmm.
important.
Glad you mentioned that.
I mean, you can, yeah, if you can get your children, if you're going through grief, just get your children, because I couldn't help my kid. I
Right.
couldn't. I didn't have it. Like I see you're upset. I see your heart's broken that you lost your papa, but that was my
Mm-hmm.
dad, and I just don't know
Yeah.
how. I can't.
Yeah.
I couldn't process. That was really helpful. And to be perfectly honest, um, like there were nights I slept with
Mm-hmm.
my Bible. I mean, my scripture for me, timeless, proven. Lots in there that's of other people that have had their hearts broken for lots of different ways, reasons, and promises that God made to them were really my lifeline, um, that I could just go to when I didn't really, I couldn't hear anything else anybody else said. Like I would shut down to anything else. I could open up my Bible and say, okay, I can read this verse over and over and meditate on it. I think I really did learn what scripture meditation was last year, and it's been very valuable to me. That really just chewing on that verse and chewing all day, just chewing on that or that sentence or whatever. Another thing that's been really helpful to me is prayers of other people who have gone through grief, and I have several books about that because I think it's been hard for me to vocalize, sort of like how I
Yes.
feel. Honestly, have led a very, I don't want to use the word, but like I haven't had a lot of devastation in my life. Like this is probably the most heartbreaking thing that had ever happened to me. And I think that's one of the things that just bowled me over. I had a great relationship with my parents, great life. I have an amazing husband. My kids are very far from perfect, but I enjoy them a whole lot. And so when this happened, I didn't really have the word. I needed to read other people's responses.
Could you list some of those books in the resources, or maybe some of the ones you read to your children?
Sure.
You have some of those too? Okay.
Yes.
Because I know that would be super helpful for people. Is there anything that you wish that people knew about homeschooling through loss that you would like to tell people?
There's more going on than maybe seems to go on with the naked eye when people are grieving and homeschooling. If you walk the door and nobody's sitting at the table with a notebook, or they're not reading a book, maybe they're just playing with blocks, or maybe they're just baking something, they're still learning happening. Which I believe is true with homeschooling in general. And I do feel like Charlotte Mason talks about that because education is a life. But looking back now, because I think we gained so much wisdom through hindsight, I see that those days where I maybe felt like we got nothing done today, we really were getting a lot done, but it was internal.
Right.
Learning. Maybe not external that I could check off on my lovely planner, but there's a lot internal going on. So, and there's so many people grieving for so many reasons right now that maybe to take a deep breath and realize if you're trying to help your children learn how to process pain, that is incredibly important.
Yeah, I mean, and studies have shown the importance of what they now call emotional intelligence, and that your success in life, the greatest determinant is your emotional intelligence, not necessarily your IQ or where you went to school or how much books you've read or anything like that. It's your ability to handle your emotions and then also handle other people's. Yeah, so that's a great point. What would you say to the homeschool parent that is grieving a loss themselves?
Stop for a minute and really think about what you need at that minute. What do you need? What do you need? Do you need a rhythm and a routine that looks like continuing on with the books do you need that? Maybe you do need that. Or do you need a day off? Or do you need, I think it's really important we don't give each other permission. And, we live in a world where if there's not a really cute Instagram photo, did it really happen?
Yeah, when you're grieving, like, those photos, they don't look so nice. You don't really want to put those on the gram. Yeah.
Exactly. Like nobody wants a picture of me with my mascara running because in Walmart and smelled a cologne that smelled like my dad. I mean, I'm not going to put that on his, you know what I mean? Like, not cute. But to recognize that those moments are just as important as anything else that you're doing. I mean, give yourself some space, give yourself some grief, and don't think that every minute has to be Instagrammable.
Yeah, that's good. But process that in a journal, maybe that this is what happened today, and this is how I felt, and allow yourself to notice those things and not just pass by the grief.
My journal writing has been, I've always been a journal writer. Always. I can't live without my journals. And my children have maybe I should burn them now. Cause, I mean, when I die, they're burned. I'll burn them all, I've always been, it's very therapeutic for me. I mean, I don't even think about it. Like, I journal everything. It's very helpful for me. And, it was helpful this year when my mother-in-law passed away. I did go back. I don't usually go back and read my journals very often, but I did go back and get the journals from when my dad passed away. And it was helpful for me to go back and read those things and think, okay, yeah, I remember that shock. Okay, I remember this. Oh, this scripture was helpful. Let me go read that again. That's right. This person said this, and that was So, that's a great point. That's super, super valuable. And my kids, that's one of the things that their counselor had them do was keep a journal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Different.
Did you want to share this verse that you put? Not this verse. The Charlotte Mason quote.
Charlotte Mason quote. Yeah, I love this quote, and I chose it because I just love Charlotte. She's a girl after my own heart because she loved to research. She loved to study.
She went through a lot personally.
And
she was orphaned and had severe health problems. She didn't have this cushy little life either.
Right. And I loved this passage before, but last year, when I can't even remember how I wasn't reading this volume. I came across this passage by accident, but it really was encouraging to me. The things that we process during grief or whatever pain that life brings us are super important, and that we were created that way. And so we're not letting anybody down by processing things. So I'll read this quote. This is from School Education, page 211 in the version that I have. Each of us is born with affinities, the desire for relationships that are proper and natural to us. We want to know, and to know deeply. The entire world lies open before us, providing endless opportunities for relationship. Charlotte Mason tells us that the scope of education should encompass the knowledge of God, the knowledge of man, and the knowledge of the universe. How vast becomes the room in which our feet have been set. As we form relations, we are changed, which in turn changes how we fit and respond within the world around us. It is through these relationships that we as individuals find our place within the larger scheme of the world, and here we find life and joy. The real question becomes which of these myriad relationships make our own and how. It is also true that we cannot catch hold of any one of the affinities that are waiting for us without strenuous effort and reverence.
So how does that relate to kind of what you've been going through, you think?
Well, I think it's because when you're grieving, you're contemplating, for me, this relationship that you have with this person that you lost. Especially because, Dad, it felt like he just dropped out of our lives. He was such an integral part of our lives. And so as I'm going through processing that grief, it helps you understand the relationship you had with that person, who you are connected to that person, who you are not connected to that person. And I can't tell you in the past year how many different books we've read, living books with characters or events that happen that you connect with, because you see those ideas, those relationships, and it helps you as you grieve. To me, grief is nothing more than just that relationship never goes away with that person, but it's learning how to have that relationship with that person in a different way, with just you here and they're not.
That's a great point.
And so how do I do that? And reading these beautiful books, reading these different things, continuing on reading her volumes is so therapeutic, because I understand that it's just part of who I am as a person. Grief isn't all I am. It's just part of that. And what does that look like as a mother, as a wife, as a homeschooler, as a friend?
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And we'll put the books that you found that were helpful in the show notes as well. But thank you for coming on and talking about something. I know this was an easy topic to discuss, so I appreciate you sharing your wisdom with everybody, and I hope it'll be an encouragement for those who are going through something like that themselves. So thank you.